They appear without warning, silent shapes in the sky, shadows in the forest, figures caught only by the unblinking eye of a camera. From deserts where white forms linger on the horizon to deep woods where something unseen bends the trees and trails where dark silhouettes watch from behind the bark, each sighting is a fragment of a puzzle too vast to comprehend. Some say it's coincidence, others believe it's all connected. And tonight, we follow that thread, from the strange lights above Los Angeles to the forests, deserts, and ruins where whispers of the unknown refuse to fade. Because if these events are truly linked, then the question is no longer if they are here, it's why. Miles away from the chaos of the city, under a blanket of still night, a man stood alone in an open field. The air was cold, heavy with the scent of damp grass, and every sound seemed sharper than usual, the distant hum of traffic, the occasional rustle of leaves. He lifted his phone toward the black horizon. On the glowing screen, a faint white orb hovered in absolute stillness. It wasn't twinkling like a star. It wasn't drifting like a balloon. It simply existed, motionless, unblinking, its pale light cutting through the void. His friends gathered around him, peering at the small display. "It's just a lens flare," one insisted, trying to sound confident. "Or maybe a reflection," another added, though his voice lacked conviction, yet the man kept staring. On the phone's screen, something shifted, a subtle tremor in the dark. To the naked eye, the sky was empty, but through the camera's gaze, a second form emerged. It was faint, barely more than an outline. Positioned just above the first orb, it pulsed once, soft, deliberate, like a heartbeat in the sky. Then it faded, swallowed by the night. If it was a trick of light, why did it move like it had intention? Why did it feel like it had noticed them? Far from any streetlight or road, a dense forest wrapped the night in layers of black and shadow. A small group of campers huddled close to their fire, its orange glow flickering across their faces. Earlier that day, they had built a crude wooden bridge over a narrow stream, laughing as the damp wood creaked under their weight. Now the laughter was gone. Somewhere deep in the trees, a low, heavy boom rippled through the air. It was not the crack of a branch or the echo of falling wood. It was denser, as though something enormous had struck the ground far away. The sound vibrated in their chests before fading into the night. They exchanged nervous glances. "Probably just a tree falling," one said, though his eyes stayed fixed on the darkness. Then came the footsteps, slow, deliberate, rustling leaves one careful step at a time. A small rock sailed out of the unseen, striking a piece of metal near their gear with a sharp, unnatural clang. Shadows twitched just beyond the firelight, moving when the wind did not. One camper stiffened. "I hear talking way out there." Another shook his head. "No, whistling, someone's whistling." The flames crackled, the forest held its breath, and the night grew colder, colder in a way that felt aware. Whether it was the wind or something else, none of them could shake the sensation that dozens of unseen eyes were fixed on them, waiting. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, the night was calm, street lamps humming faintly, sprinklers clicking in the distance. A young mother stepped out of her front gate, guiding her toddler down the walkway. The soft shuffle of tiny shoes against the pavement was the only sound. From across the street, her neighbor's doorbell camera watched. At first, it captured nothing unusual, the pair moving slowly, the child reaching out toward the air as toddlers do. But then, on the replay, something else appeared. Between the woman and her child, a patch of the video seemed to blur unnaturally. The distortion took shape, a faint, translucent figure about the size of the toddler. It stood close hand level with the child's, its outline shimmering like heat above asphalt. The mother kept walking, unaware. The child, however, tilted their head up, as if listening to a voice no one else could hear. Some would dismiss it as a camera glitch, compression artifacts, nothing more. But the odd pixelation followed the child step for step, never lagging, never breaking. And in that frozen frame, the hand of the figure seemed to almost touch the child's. Far from the suburbs, on a windswept hill, stood the remains of an ancient stone church. Its roof had long since collapsed, leaving only jagged walls and a doorway that gaped like a silent mouth. Moss clung to the stones, and the air smelled of damp earth and something older, something left behind. An explorer, drawn by rumors of strange occurrences, approached with a camera in hand. At first, there was nothing, just the crunch of gravel beneath his boots. Then, from the tree line, it came a small, wavering voice. "Mommy, Daddy." It was faint, almost carried away by the wind, but it was unmistakably a child's call. He froze, scanning the empty landscape. No one was there. The voice did not repeat. Days later, he returned. This time, the air felt thicker, heavier, as if the place was holding its breath. Pushing through tall grass, he caught a flicker of movement, a pale, distorted face staring at him from between the blades. In a blink, it was gone. Inside the church, the silence deepened. He stepped over fallen beams, past crumbling walls. Then the wooden door, hanging loose on rusted hinges, swung inward with a groan, though there was no wind. The feeling was no longer that he was alone, but that whatever was here was closer now, watching. High in the mountains, the morning mist still clung to the trees, curling low around the narrow dirt path. The forest was silent except for the occasional drop of water falling from the canopy above. It was here that a groundskeeper, making his rounds at a remote glamping site, stopped dead in his tracks. Blocking the trail ahead was a blackened mass of metal, charred, fractured, and alien to the surroundings. He stepped closer. The thing was larger than a suitcase, its surface scorched and rough to the touch. Under the blackened crust were plates of thick steel, bolted tight around an inner core of something fibrous and carbon-like. It was heavier than it looked. Dragging it across the path took the strength of both arms and the help of a small lawn tractor. But there were no broken branches, no crater, no scorched ground around it. No sign of impact. It was as if it had been placed there deliberately in the middle of the trail. The forest around him remained unnervingly quiet, as if waiting to see what he would do with it. On another day in another part of the world, the woods behaved in ways that defied reason. A hiker had paused to rest, leaning against a tree when he noticed movement ahead. One by one, the trunks of young trees began to bend, slowly, almost reluctantly, as though pressed by invisible hands. Branches creaked under the strain before snapping with a sharp, hollow crack. There was no wind, not a single leaf around them trembled. No people, no animals, just the silent, unnatural motion of the forest reacting to something unseen. The hiker's breath caught in his throat. His eyes swept the tree line, half expecting to see a figure emerge. But the bending trees stood alone, their slow, deliberate movement feeling less like nature and more like a signal. When the last branch snapped, the woods fell still again. The hiker realized he was holding his breath, and that, for reasons he couldn't explain, he no longer felt welcome there. In the vast emptiness of the Sahara, the heat of the day had long bled away, leaving the dunes silver under the rising moon. Near the border of Algeria and Morocco, a lone traveler stopped to take photographs of the night horizon. The wind was soft, carrying only the faint hiss of sand shifting in the dark. He stood alone, or so he thought. Later, reviewing the photos, he froze. In one frame, far in the distance, stood a figure, white, motionless. Its outline was blurred, as if the camera had caught it mid-movement, yet no such figure had been there when he pressed the shutter. When locals saw the image, their expressions changed. They told him in hushed voices that it looked like the spirit of the desert, an omen. They warned him never to walk outside after dark, especially alone. The traveler didn't return to that spot. But he kept the photo, studying it on quiet nights, wondering if the camera had captured something human, or something that belonged entirely to the sand and silence. Deep in a remote forest where sunlight only reached the ground in narrow shafts, a man stumbled upon something odd, a dome-like structure made entirely of twigs and branches woven together with unnatural precision. It was no accident of fallen wood. This had been built. Crouching, he peered into the small opening. Inside, resting on the packed earth, was a massive white paw. Its fur was coarse, thick, and cleaner than any wild animal should be. The claws were long, curved, and sharp, too sharp for a bear dulled by life in the wild. The paw didn't move. The air inside the shelter was cold and still, but an instinct older than reason told him not to get closer. He backed away slowly, never taking his eyes off the dark interior. Somewhere above, a branch creaked, not from wind, but as if something heavy had shifted its weight to watch him go. The trail was supposed to be familiar, one the woman had walked many times before. But that afternoon, as the sky dimmed and the light shifted, something felt different. She rounded a bend and stopped. Across the path, massive logs lay sprawled, freshly fallen and stacked in a way that didn't feel natural. She scanned the canopy. There had been no wind strong enough to bring these down. Her instincts told her to turn back, and she obeyed. Later, while reviewing the video she had filmed on her phone, her stomach tightened. There, just behind one of the trees in the distance, was a shape, tall, broad, and almost blending perfectly with the bark. It stood perfectly still, yet its outline suggested something more than shadow. Some who saw the footage swore it was Bigfoot. Others said it could have been a person in camouflage. But the woman knew one thing: she had been watched, and whatever it was patient. Night had fallen when Chris and his friends followed the GPS coordinates from the Randonautica app. The trail wound deeper into the woods, their flashlights cutting narrow cones of light through the darkness. Then they stepped into a clearing and froze. Dozens of coffins lay scattered across the grass, some closed, others gaping open. A table stood nearby, its surface bare except for a length of rope coiled neatly beside it. The air was still, yet thick with a smell like damp earth and something metallic. Chris knelt beside one of the open coffins, shining his light inside. Empty. But the ground around it bore marks, as if something heavy had been dragged away. A sudden sound, a snap from the tree line, made them all turn. Nothing, just the dark pressing in on every side. No one spoke as they backed out of the clearing. They didn't run. Somehow it felt like running would have been the wrong thing to do. Chris and his friends never returned to that clearing. The woman on the trail still avoids that path. The traveler in the desert has never shown his photo to strangers again. Different places, different people, different encounters, yet each one carries the same unshakable feeling. They were being watched, not by ghosts, not by legends, but by something that moves between the sky and the shadows, leaving traces only for those willing to see. And when you look back to that night over Los Angeles, the silent triangular craft, hovering with impossible precision, you can't help but wonder, was it simply passing by or quietly pulling the strings of everything that followed? What do you think these sightings mean? Are they fragments of one hidden truth or just accidents of imagination? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you want to keep uncovering the strange and the unexplained, make sure to like this video, subscribe to X-Site, and turn on notifications, so you're here the next time the unknown decides to reveal itself.